So, I'd like to briefly share a little known fact from one of the most respected, loved, and emulated people around the world. And it ain't Jesus, as we say here in the South. No, I'm talking about Martin Luther King Jr. Now, the following information has been detailed in some books that I have seen over the years, but most of my talk comes from an online opinion piece published some years ago in the Guardian newspaper called When Martin Luther King Gave Up His Guns. After his house was firebombed, Dr. King applied for a concealed carry permit. This happened in Montgomery, Alabama during the infamous protest of the bus boycott of 1955 and 56. Now, just to remind some of our viewers, during the segregation days of the South here in the United States, the blacks, African Americans, were not allowed in certain places or in certain areas. And one of these included buses. They were not allowed to sit in sections of the bus. So they were segregated to a section of the bus. Now, a black woman named Rosa Parks at the time sat in the white section of a bus. And at that time, it was against the laws not of the U.S. nationally, but of the state of Alabama. When Ms. Parks refused to move, she was promptly arrested and jailed for almost a week. Decades later, Ms. Parks said that all she was trying to do was to get home from work. The TV broadcasts of the boycott brought Ms. Parks, MLK, and other protesters national headlines. As a result, journalists and other civil rights groups met with Martin Luther King at his house. This included members of pacifist or nonviolent black groups who had joined the protests. They noticed while in the house of Dr. King that he had many guns lying around. As the story goes, some of the members of these pacifist groups stayed up all night debating with Dr. King, trying to convince him that armed self-defense would damage rather than help their mutual cause. Now, according to the Guardian article, it was not long before King had come around to the position advocated by these individuals and the groups they represented. And from that time on, Dr. King adopted a policy of nonviolence, not just when it came to protests, but when it came to him personally as a way of life. Dr. King even maintained his resolve under conditions that would make others falter. For example, years later, when he was addressing a convention, a member of the American Nazi Party jumped onto the stage and is said to have hit him in the face. Dr. King responded with a level of courage, said news accounts, that made a lifelong impression on many of those in the audience. One of them was the noted educator and activist Septima Clark, who has now gone down as the grandmother of the civil rights movement. According to Ms. Clark, Dr. King dropped his hands like a newborn baby and spoke calmly to his white supremacist attacker. King made no effort to protect himself, they say, even as he was knocked backwards by further blows from this white supremacist, and he later even insisted that they not press charges against his attackers. Now, my point is that most of Christianity expects a clergyman like Dr. King, who was an ordained Baptist minister, to live by such a personal vow of nonviolence. But why do we expect only the clergy to abstain from all types of violence, let alone from killing? Now, I agree with Dr. King when he said that loyalty to country should not be measured by your ability to kill, and with his definition of nonviolence as avoiding not only external physical violence, but also internal violence of spirit. You not only refuse to shoot a man, but you refuse to hate him. And that's because at the center of nonviolence stands the principle of love. That old law about an eye for an eye leaves everybody blind. Time is always right to do the right thing. Unfortunately, like most in the clergy, Dr. King did not preach against people using guns to defend themselves unless they found themselves involved in some kind of a protest. If you're in a political situation, Dr. Kim believed that you would be justified to kill the person or persons breaking into your house or your country, but not killing the racist at a protest event that you might attend. Now, I want you to ask yourself a question. Did Jesus make any such distinction when it came to this matter? Did Jesus say, but I tell you, love your enemies, except when it comes to defending home or country? So let me once again encourage any self professed pastor teachers out there not to divide Christ in such ways. After all, Jesus said in Paul, his apostle, never pay back evil for evil to anyone and to live in peace with everyone. And that's Romans 12. Note here in the scripture the words anyone and everyone, meaning not just some, but do evil unto others. And Jesus was not obviously directing his commandments to a section of the church only, that is, the clergy. So, may I humbly suggest that you be brave enough to use the God given authority your church has given you and direct your sheep to always and not just sometimes do the right thing.